Better before, right?
Yeah, you're a bit darker now. Anyway, welcome to another edition to Ramsey Unleashed Going Beyond Borders. When my guest sorts his lighting out, well, okay. As I just hit the go live button, he's decided to play with his light. So we are live. So as I just about to, so we are live on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. Ramsey Unleashed Going Beyond Borders podcast with my guest Phillip Tanzer. So I've been trying to get interview Phillip for a while actually, but I think it's just been an opportunity knocks has not really kind of happened because I've been really busy with work and then he's been busy and it's been like kind of passing ships in the night, and it's just been one of these things, you know. So obviously, well, that's just to people's comments if they do decide to comment in our interview. But for those who are not tuned in, who will be watching us or catch this live, this is Ramsey Unleashed Going Beyond Borders podcast, and I'm basically I've not done one for a while, and I thought, well, take the opportunity, let's just go for it. Sometimes you just got to do it off the cuff completely. But my guest Phillip has a great story, and let's just find out a bit about them. So, welcome, Phillip, and thank you for coming on the Ramsey Unleashed Going Beyond Borders podcast. How you doing?
My pleasure to be here on the podcast.
Yeah.
Fire away. Ask me what you want to know.
Well, let's find out. I usually, for those who are watching this, I usually do a bit of a kind of beginning, middle, end, just to find out where people are. Just a bit about the guest. It's not about me; it's about the guest. That's the whole point, and it's telling their story and their journey to challenge you out there. So, Phillip, let's just start at the beginning. Who's Phillip Tanzer? Tell us about your life growing up, education, starting where you're born. Basically, tell us about that.
That's funny. Today, a friend of mine, he asked me to write a short bio about myself, and he said, "And don't worry, it can be controversial." And I was like, "Yeah, okay." So my whole life is controversial and a lot of ups and downs or changes in direction. So my name is Phillip Tanzer. I'm 43 years old, almost 44 years old. I'm originally from Germany. So I was born in Pforzheim, which is close to Stuttgart in the south of Germany. My dad, he is from East Germany. He actually jumped from a ship to escape communist Germany, and my mom is from West Germany. And yeah, I grew up in a small town, I would say, fairly protected. I've got a brother 2 years older than me. My dad's a dentist, and I would say we grew up upper middle class. We were doing fine. We were doing well. My my mom unfortunately left the family when I was about 10 years old, and she left the family to be with a South African weapon dealer. Uh, so so
You really make that up, did you?
that's when
So,
our life turned turned a little bit into a crime story. I mean, there wasn't a lot of crime going on, but my grandparents, my mom's parents, they tried to separate my mom from her new partner, so sending the police after him and stuff like that. So let's say that part of my life was interesting. And
wow.
yeah.
How
And even
to
though, of course, we didn't know everything that was going on, we knew quite a bit of what was going on. And we lived with my father, and who did a good job. I was never well, back then as a kid, I was not very close to my father. We didn't have a lot in common, but he was a good father. Not a great dad, but a good father.
okay.
And I was still very close to my mom emotionally, and she lived in South Africa at that time. And when I was 16 years old, my mom decided, or she decided to leave her second partner, second husband, and he couldn't deal with that because he was working for the old regime, for the apartheid regime, and he by this point he had already lost everything because the regime had changed. He was a weapons dealer and leader of a killer commando. He wasn't doing that anymore. He had no money left. He was literally living off my dad's money in many ways, and now his wife was about to leave him as well for very good reasons. I mean, he was an asshole. And then he shot her,
So,
and
so your
so
dad
he
shot. So
not my dad. So my mom's second husband shot my mom, and then he shot himself.
good grief.
So that was when I was 16. At the same time, I'm trying to run through all the
No, no,
craziness.
no. It's
So
all
at
good.
the
This
same
is
time, I was never normal in many ways. I would say I
right.
always like I didn't like it. I didn't like it when people expected me to conform. So I don't have a problem with conforming, but I don't like it when people expect me to conform. And I started to back in the days. Marilyn Manson was very big, and I started dressing like a mix of the three artists that I liked the most, and that was Alice Cooper, Prince, and Marilyn Manson. So that's how I looked. Weird black dresses and high heels at times and stuff like that. And I pursued a career as a makeup artist and hairdresser at the time.
So,
um, Hi,
so
Jacqueline. Nice to
and
have you as a guest.
viewer Jacqueline McKeever is in Florida. I'm viewing all the way from America. Um, yeah. So basically, you're
Oh, I'm
so
not finished.
I know, no,
I'm
you're
not
not fair. I'm
finished.
just let me. I mean, just I'm going to just back a little bit because you said that you've gone from a crime story to, this is crumbs and
Let me
some of the movie.
let me
I'll let
run
you
through it
carry
real
on.
quick, because
Okay,
because
that's
otherwise
okay.
people look lose track. So I was running around like Marilyn Manson. I also was more attracted to men than I was attracted to women,
Right.
though I did not call myself gay. I said I'm asexual with a tendency towards men. And already at that time, people kept pushing this, oh, so you're gay. And I was like, no, 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 I, I haven't made up my mind yet. Oh, you have to be proud of it, you have to come out. And so there was a strong push towards identifying as gay, or yeah, wearing a wearing a badge or something like that.
Right.
And I was a vegetarian at the time. I didn't smoke, didn't drink, never took drugs, uh, and was a pacifist, a very strong pacifist. And in Germany, you have to go to the military unless you are a pacifist. And so for me, it would have been very easy to get out of it and say, "Oh, I'm doing civil service," but I didn't want to, because I wanted to see if my prejudice towards the military and were justified, and I wanted to see if they would try to break me because of the way I looked, because I was attracted to men, and I wanted to see if I would survive. And then I joined the military, and after 3 weeks my lieutenant asked me if I wanted to become a trainer in the military, and I was like,
And
I,
how old were
I'm a
you?
pacifist. I'm against the military. And he said every German soldier should be a pacifist because we're there to protect peace. And that you're against the military, well, that's your right. Uh, please don't promote that. But as long as you're doing as good a job as you're doing already, we're fine. And in the end, I stayed in the military for 3 years. After I left the military, I tried to become a makeup artist, but the art college or university didn't accept me because of the way I looked, because I looked like Marilyn Manson, which was, funny enough, not a problem in the military. So that's when I really learned that the people that talk about tolerance all the time, artists, they are usually quite intolerant, where normal people, all they care about is that you're a good guy and that you do a good job. After that, sorry, I
I'll,
know it's a lot. I know it's a
I'll
lot.
pause you just well, kind of before you go, just to hi to everyone who's watching around the world. Just to say, how old were you when you said you're 16? So when did you join the army? 16, 18?
18 roughly, yeah, 17, 18.
Okay, so this all and how so basically when you left when you're 20 around about 21, 22.
21, 22, yeah.
Okay,
roughly.
so you kind of went back to your sort of rock star look, kind of goth look after you when you left the army. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hi,
So
Tammy, and hi, Eugene, by the way.
to people who are watching, what? So when you left, basically, what was the net? Well, you've left the army. I mean, army does discipline you. It does teach you a lot of things. Okay, you're against it, but you were doing a good job, and you were promoted to train folk. So now leaving the army, I mean, a lot of people. Where did your life go from there?
So I actually left the army a little bit early, a couple of months early,
Okay.
because I've always been a very spiritual person, and I felt a calling that I should go into the woods bare barefoot and just in white clothes and live in the forest for a couple of months. So I I tried that, which was a successful failure. It was incredibly cold, and I learned a lot about my limitations. And yeah, I had some of these smaller experiences where I did stupid things. And but I appreciate these experiences because I usually figured out that I was stupid very, very fast, and I don't have a problem admitting when I do something stupid. So that's good.
So, what about
Um,
I was going to ask about obviously your education. I know you. It sounds like, well, obviously with what you've been through when you were your parents. What was you got just to backtrack in your education? Did you go? You obviously lived in a decent lifestyle, in upper middle class. But was your education school, college, university, or anything? Did you do any of that?
so in Germany, we have a slightly different structure. First, we have a primary school, and then, depending on how well you're doing in primary school, then you're being sent to one of three or four different schools. If so, there's a school for people that are, let's say, um, challenged, that have learning difficulties. That's the lowest one of these schools, so to speak, or the most specialized one of these schools. And then you have one for the kids that didn't do well in school, one for the kids that did mediocre, and one for the kids that did very well in primary school. And I did very well, so I was sent to the highest level of education. But I did struggle a little bit. My brother was much better in school. I was very good at art and religion. Like, we had religion in school, so there were some topics that I was good in. But I would say overall it was slightly overwhelming for me, and my dad actually encouraged me to leave school at the age of 16 and pursue my career wish of becoming a makeup artist, which
So,
I'm actually thankful for.
okay. So so where did your makeup artist career take you?
Well, I was working in a theater in my hometown for a while. That was, yeah, roughly during the same time when I became a hairdresser. So I did the two things parallel, and it was great. It was a good time, but that was something like an apprenticeship. It wasn't a proper apprenticeship, but something like an apprenticeship. Now, but I wanted to study it in a university, but the university obviously didn't take me because of the way I looked, which really shocked me. And that university was in the east of Germany, where my father's originally from. So by that time, obviously, the east was liberated. It wasn't communist Germany anymore, but you could still feel a difference between the two sides. I actually prefer the East Germany to West Germany in some regards. And even though I wasn't accepted in the art school, I did move to Dresden, and I lived the next, I think, 15 years there before I moved to Scotland eventually. And while I was in Dresden, I became very involved in the gay community, in the LGBT community, and because of the way I looked, like I was dressed in leather most of the time and looked quite punk. And in the normal gay community, people are very judgmental, I would say, and I didn't fit in and I started going into the leather and fetish community, even though I didn't actually have any sexuality. I didn't have sex with people, but I fitted better into that scene, so to speak. And because people were much older, they were actually better to talk to. So sometimes I would sit in a leather bar or a sex club at the bar and talk to people
So
about
you sat in
politics.
you sat in a leather bar.
Yeah, and I would be
What
talking to
the
people about religion, God, education, politics, while other stuff was going on in the dark room, so to speak. And I I saw a magazine, like a gay fetish magazine, and something was advertised there, a competition to become German Mr. Leather, which is the official representative of the gay leather and fetish community. And I I felt a calling. Something inside told me you have to do that. You should apply for that, and I did, and I won for some reason, and I became the youngest Mr. Leather, I think worldwide. I was the youngest Mr. Leather at that time, and the reason I wanted to do that was because I saw a lot of negative things in the gay community and in the leather community. A lot of people taking drugs, a lot of people being very promiscuous, STDs, loneliness, mental health problems, suicide. And I thought if I would become German Mr. Leather, I had a platform where I could actually like highlight some of these issues, and I did. I worked incredibly hard for a year, writing columns and trying to highlight these issues. But in the end, I did suffer from burnout because I was at a different party every weekend, handing out condoms and telling people to stay safe and stuff like that. And after a while, it does take its toll, and it did. And I I I didn't dislike the community at that time because I met really nice people, and I had a lot of support, but I had to distance myself for my own well-being, both physical and mental well-being. So I lived a a rather quiet life for the most part. I became a um, like independent rock and alternative rock DJ in Dresden. Didn't make money with that, of course, but yeah, that's how I spent most of my times. That's how I met most of my friends, and they're still my friends from the rock scene, so to speak. And it was a family, and I lived in a little garden house outside of Dresden, and then I desperately needed money because I ran out of the money that I made in the military. And at the same time, I was approached if I wanted to work in the porn industry. And now it's very important to say that at that time I was around 27, 28, something like that. No, 29 probably. And up to that point, I had almost no sexual relations to anybody. I could feel that a relationship with a man didn't make any sense to me. I was physically attracted to men, but I didn't see the point in having a relationship with a man because it felt like too much of the same. I'm a guy, and I thought, well, there's just another guy. There's nothing that person can really bring to the table that I need. But
why
I
just before why did I mean what why did you choose that road? Why not just your normal adult industry with females?
Well,
Even
first
though
of all,
you
I wasn't attracted to women. I tried. I was in very short relationships with women when I was 18. I tried that, and it felt physically right, but I didn't feel too connected, and I wasn't deeply attracted, I would say. I mean, it worked, but I wasn't very attracted. And with men, when I started having experiences with men, it felt the only thing I can say is it felt horny. So I was definitely physically attracted to men. I didn't connect deeply, so there was no deep connection, but there was, I would say, sexual attraction. And at the age of 27, I started to relax in, well, let's say relax in regards to sexuality. And I started to have sexual contact with guys, predominantly one night stands and stuff like that. So very superficial things. And, but I was able to, to watch these situations. So while it happened, I was like, huh, that's not very fulfilling, is it? And so I checked how I felt in these situations, and there were some situations that felt good and where I felt a connection. I would say 85-90% of the situations were completely meaningless, and then maybe 5% 10% were bad, and then 5% maybe were good. And yeah, as I said, I ran out of money, and then I was approached by somebody in the porn industry, and I decided to start working as a porn actor. But I wanted to actually bring something positive to the porn industry because I didn't have a very high opinion of porn. And I thought, oh, there should be more connection, more personal connection in the movies. Maybe I can bring that to it. And I think I succeeded a couple of times, but overall, it's a big industry. I actually I really loved the people that I was working with, not the other actors, but the people behind the camera. I think they were very, very good, nice people. I liked working with them, but it's also a very dark place, and I did see quite a few people going downhill. And then I stopped working in the industry, and at the age of 32, I
So what?
decided.
Before
I
you,
decided,
we'll
yeah.
have a pause there a second. I'm interviewing Philip Tanzer for those who are watching or listening on the podcast. He's originally from Germany, but is now residing in Scotland. We're hearing his story and how what he's been through from obviously living in Germany at the time when it was East and West Germany, and obviously hearing that his mother was shot by an ex-partner. And just him how he's gone into where he is from being an army to sort of being a sort of goth-like character through his music tastes and just in obviously what he's led to and where he is, well, from being obviously dabbling into the porn industry and how. But let's when you said people went downhill, when you were seeing the dark side of it, what to explain, elaborate on the dark side. What were you actually seeing?
Well, well, a lot of people in the gay community and especially in the sex work community, or in the area of sex work, um, take drugs. Then a lot of people, besides doing porn, they also do sex work on the side. Not all of them, but many of them. So prostitution, and that definitely you sell parts of your soul, whether you notice it at that point or not. You give pieces of yourself away. And then there's also, for me, it was very easy because I lived, as I said, I lived in a small garden house in Germany, and I just flew over to America for a week, worked there, and flew back to my little garden house, which was very grounding. But for the other guys, they lived in LA, San Francisco, New York, so they were permanently surrounded by the gay lifestyle, and they were rather famous. So they were carrying a lot of
Oh, slight connection issue there, and connections died. Come back to Philip in a second.
of sex work.
Oh, your connection died there a second. Oh,
Oh, yep,
you're back again. Oh, there we go.
you're back.
There we go. You're back. Get a slight connection issue there. Right, carry on. You're saying. I'll let you repeat that
What was the last thing you heard?
about I think you're just moving your hands in the industry. They did that and it froze, kind of thing.
Okay.
So, kind
So
of,
yeah, in the industry, yeah, mental health problems, drug problems, promiscuity. I was protected from that because, as I said, I never did drugs. I always practiced safe sex. So I was quite protected from all of these things, and even in regards to like giving away pieces of your soul, for the most part, I was protected. There were some situations where I think I was harmed or where I harmed myself by participating, but for the most part, I was relatively safe. But then at the age of 32, um, most of my friends, I have to say, are straight, almost all of them. And I had a very close friend, and he was talking to me a lot about his sex life with his partner. And I felt like I couldn't participate in the conversation because it had been so long since I had intimacy with a woman. And I thought I should try that again because I said, well, it can't be worse than with guys. So I I went to a brothel to see if I could have sexuality with women, and shortly after that, I fell in love with a very wonderful woman from Prague, from the Czech Republic, and we were in a relationship. And yeah, since then, I was looking forward to hopefully to having a family. That was over 10 years ago. Um, but I knew that I had to, or I wanted to move to Scotland. So at the age of, I don't know, 34, 35, I moved to Scotland.
so why did you want to come
And
here? What was it? It must
oh,
have, it's
I
not a
just fell in
decision.
love.
Right,
I
okay.
fell in love with Scotland. When I touched Scottish soil for the very first time, I immediately knew that I would move to Scotland.
Right.
Again, it felt like a calling. And then I moved to the far top of Scotland, a place called Durness, and I started building my house. So I built
Mhm.
my house with my own hands. It took me 1.5 years, and since then I was hoping for somebody, for the right girl to come into my house, and um, I'm still working on that. Let's put it that way. Still working on that. And in the last few years, I became very involved with men's rights issues.
Okay.
I first became aware with these issues when I was in the military because a lot of my comrades, they lost their children in custody battles. So I and when I realized that I could have a family of my own, my first or second thought was, I don't want to lose my children in a potential custody battle.
So at what point, because obviously at the beginning of the interview, you said, well, you were going through that point, you said yourself asexual, but then you're kind of, I mean, at what point did that change? Your head change because you're dating a woman from Prague? Did you start to see that you're more heterosexual, or how did nothing changed?
To be honest, I would say that nothing changed really. I would still say I'm relatively asexual with a tendency towards men. So I'm still visually more attracted to men than to women. I just don't see the point in a relationship, and I do really enjoy intimacy with women more. And but that doesn't go through visual things. So I can see the most beautiful woman and I can appreciate her for her beauty, but if she doesn't have a good character, then I'm not really attracted to her. Whereas with men, I don't care about their characters.
Okay, got you.
Yeah. And yeah, as you know, and that's how we met each other in the last 4 years. I became involved with the Scottish Family Party, and I ran as a candidate for the Highlands and
Mm.
Islands for the socially very conservative Scottish Family Party.
So how did you? Well, I came across you being interviewed by Richard Lucas. That's where I and hearing your story a little bit. How did you meet Richard? How did you get in? I mean, obviously living in pretty much out of nowhere, in the middle of nowhere, on top of Scotland. So, how did you suddenly come across? I mean, you're into man's rights and things, and which is good, and we can talk more about it, especially what you're into now. But we'll come into that. I mean, did Richard contact you, or did you? How did you meet?
So Richard Lucas from the Scottish Family Party, he did videos about LGBT indoctrination in schools, and I'm actually, even though it sounds weird with my past, I'm actually quite a conservative person, and I think that the destruction of the family, divorce rates, and what's happening in regards to indoctrination in schools is breaking the backbone of society, and I'm very worried about that. And I saw some videos that Richard was putting up on YouTube, and I subscribed to his channel and his newsletter, and I saw that he was organizing a Scottish Family Party meeting in Aberdeen, and then I drove uh, 7 or 8 hours through a snowstorm to Aberdeen, and there were very few people. I think we were only 3 or 4 people. But yeah, that was my first interaction with Richard, and I was like, I'm here to support you because the Scottish Family Party is often demonized as um, homophobic and stuff like that. And I thought having a former gay, former porn actor in the party might be beneficial for the Scottish Family Party.
So, knowing obviously the people who know what you've been through, as in the gay industry, how do the people who are still in the, not necessarily the industry, how do they, or kind of the LGBT folk, are they kind of, a lot of people, well, let's just say a scenario of a cult, when you leave a cult, they kind of get all, they might be nicey when you're in it, but as soon as you try to leave, they're literally as nasty as hell, basically. And how have you found that? Have you found it as that backlash with you technically not being there anymore, and now being technically, in a sense, against it?
Hmm. So when I first came out in a interview with a woman called Sue. She interviewed me as a porn actor, and I mentioned that I was in a relationship with a woman now, and I didn't think it was a big issue, and I received a very big backlash from that, and people told me that I should die. So there were quite a lot of um, attacks and very nasty messages from former fans that really didn't appreciate that I started dating women. There were also people that supported me and that said, "Hey, he's just doing what he's happy with." And I would say that over the last 10 years, there were always some voices that supported me, some voices that were against me. The stronger my opposition became against the LGBT community, and the more conservative my views became, obviously, the stronger the attacks started to get. But I don't blame them. I'm currently at a point where I'm really fighting against the LGBT lobbies or the LGBT community, not against individuals. That's very important. I I have compassion and love for all people. And for example, 2 days ago, a gay couple came into my shop and wanted to buy a piece of my art. I'm an artist. Wanted to buy a piece of my art for a friend who is apparently a huge fan of mine, and we had a really nice and long conversation. And we also had a conversation about my views now and how critical I am of what's going on at the moment in the LGBT community. And they agreed with some of the things, they disagreed with other parts. So I I'm I'm glad and I'm thankful that there are still people from that time of my life that see me as the person that I am and know that deeply care and that I'm a good person, even though I, in some ways, attack the lifestyles that they live. Um, but I do it out of care and out of compassion. And most of the people from back then, I think, they still know that.
So tell us about your, well, you met Richard, you kind of got involved in the Scottish Family Party, you stood as a candidate last year, was last year?
Yeah.
Lost track.
No, this year. I think it was
It
this
was,
year.
sorry, it was this year. Crumbs. They've got yeah, the pandemic's gonna be everyone out of sync. But so this year you stood as a candidate. So that must have been. Did you get? How was your sort of? I mean, you campaigned. You're out handing leaflets out. You're doing. You're literally every here, there, and everywhere. So, I mean, what was your kind of general? You turning up, people obviously hearing, knowing who you are, knowing where you've been, and you're out trying to be a candidate. What was your kind of general response from the public who and while you were campaigning?
Interestingly enough, I would say that our society is so progressive now, has normalized um, certain things so much that I think it was easier for many people to fully accept that I'm a porn actor than me standing up for family values and being a conservative. So I think there was, in some ways, there was more backlash to me being conservative in the Highlands than being a gay porn actor in the Highlands. I had some attacks, some emails, threatening emails. I had one person who actually knows me personally. Um, he became verbally very aggressive and very insulting, and that was while I was standing next to two police officers, and they're like, "Oh my God, what was that?" And they're like, "Yeah, get used to it. If you're on the wrong side of the agenda, that happens to you." But overall, it was positive. I did go to a lot of doors, talk to people, and overall, I do enjoy that. But it was still during Corona and during lockdowns, so that was an issue.
So tell you did have knowing you for a wee while now that you did tell us that you had started going to church. So tell us your journey into going to church. Eh,
Sure. By the way, if somebody in the chat has any questions, feel free to ask me. I'm always open to questions. So I was always. Am I taking your job away,
Probably, I think you are, but you try
Fraser?
to carry on. I'm just, I usually try and I do see people who come in because I'm doing, if I do put as a podcast, I do like to, even though I'm using video, but I try and, yeah, I like to, I try not, I keep the focus. That's what I try and do, but I do see people. But it's good to see people who are watching, wherever they are watching around the world.
Okay.
But yeah, but so tell you, yeah, you decided to go to church. Tell us about your journey into that and why,
Yeah.
considering you're
So
spiritual but not
I
quite.
was I
Yeah.
was I was I was baptized as a child, and we did go to church on Christmas, but I did not grow up in a religious family by any stretch of the imagination. But I always felt a very deep connection to God, and but I never went to church like every Sunday. And when I moved to Durness in Scotland, I thought that would be a good time to start. But people warned me, and they said, "Oh, maybe you shouldn't go to church. The minister is very much fire and brimstone, and he would probably not approve of you." But then that minister retired, and a new one from South Africa started, and I thought, "Here's my chance." And from that point on, I started going to church, and I went pretty much every Sunday since. And that minister was very good. I liked him a lot. And then but he had to move away, and we got a new one, Andrea. she's okay. I think she's good for younger audience, but I prefer now. I would actually prefer a more old fashioned, a
Well,
bit more
this
Bible
is.
focused approach.
I'm going to ask a slightly controversial question here, which I know people might in this day and age. Okay, I'm guessing the church in Durness is the Church of Scotland. I'm guessing, or
Yes, yes.
right? Okay, so what's your view? Even though technically in the Bible, what it says, what's your view of a male to female minister teaching the word? Now, obviously, more man or woman that
I'm
can't be easy. I know the Church of Scotland, in a sense, a lot of I'm going to say this: a lot of they're less Christian than they are Christian these days, and that's a shame.
so so if there was a female minister who did not bring feminism or liberalism into the church and would actually preach the word, then I wouldn't mind a female minister. I have never met such a female minister. So I have encountered quite a few very good male ministers. I have only encountered female ministers that were, in my opinion, suboptimal because of their political agenda and social views. And I'm not very, and to be honest, I'm not happy to say that, but it's similar to when I was in the military. We had women in the military, and before I worked with women in the military, I was all for women in on the front line because yay, equality. But I always ended up carrying two backpacks, my backpack and the backpack of a woman. And after a while, I realized that physically they were not capable of the same things that most of the guys were capable of. And I also realized that if there was actually a risky situation, the male soldiers would always try to protect the women instead of doing their job. So, and yeah, in the church, I was all for female ministers before I actually experienced quite a few female ministers, and now yeah, I would say I'm not in favor of female ministers now.
So, looking obviously, I'm guessing Durness, the only church is only one church in Durness. Is there other churches around that you can go to, or
There, so we have the Church of Scotland in Durness, and then we have the Episcopalian Church down the road, and they had a very good minister, Father Nicholas. He was great, and he retired, and then they had a new minister, a woman, and we went to the first service that she gave, and she started talking about the patriarchy and oppression and all that stuff, and I actually stood up and I told her that I don't want to listen to that anymore. The thing is, I'm the only man who still goes to church here, so I'm the only man in church in both congregations, um, apart from the husband of the minister. He comes up,
so?
and yeah.
I was going to say, what's your I was going to say, knowing now that the Church of Scotland is kind of more pro gay now, and they accepting gay marriage and things. The Scottish Episcopal is also more pro gay, accepting gay marriage. They become. What's your view of why these churches and even the Methodists now are accepting it? Why are they losing sight of the Bible doctrine to more follow the ways of the world? Why do you think they're going down that road, especially when you're getting more? Well, as you see, you're basically getting. Well, it doesn't matter. You can be anybody can be a minister, but they're losing the sight of the true aspect of what it is to be a Christian.
Okay, I am gonna answer that in two ways. The one
Okay.
is the I think that most of them think that they act compassionate, so they don't want to discriminate, and they think that to love means like Christian love, to love one another means to not discriminate or judge others. That's the nice interpretation of what's happening, but I would say what's really happening is that Satan has taken over the church. So I know that sounds incredibly harsh, and I'm not saying that these ministers are intentionally following Satan or something. I'm not saying that at all. I think these people are very caring and try to do the right thing, but I don't think they are. I think that it's the duty of the church to help people not to fall into sin, not to encourage them to stay where they are. But I have to say, the church made some immense mistakes in the past because they treated gay people like the plague, but they didn't treat adulterers or straight sinners in the same way. And I have to say, a straight person who commits adultery, I mean, that's as much a sin as homosexual adultery, I would say. And I think the church made a big mistake in the past, singling out certain sinners and not calling out all sinners, which is 100% everybody of us. We're all sinners.
Yeah.
And there was a hierarchy of sinners created. And instead of judging the sin, the church started judging the people. And I think as Christians, we have to love everybody, including and especially the sinners. But that doesn't mean that we have to excuse their sin.
Okay. So knowing, well, you obviously know that Richard is he is a Christian as well. How have you found dealing with him? Because he's more evangelical. He goes to a different church in Edinburgh, and he's more evangelical, more of a Christian. How have you found getting to know him on a Christian basis out with the political side?
I would say that Richard and I, we predominantly talked about political aspects, going into the private because of my background, obviously.
Right.
But our conversations were usually not connected to faith.
Okay.
They were more connected in overall lifestyle choices and statistics. So he would cite statistics why certain lifestyle choices are smarter than others.
Okay. So if I was to ask, okay, now that you've leading into the way that you've been dabbling into sort of church over the last few years, getting in where you are, where would looking at what you know and what you stand for, I mean, where would you say your faith is? Or would you say that you have committed your life to Christ?
Yeah, but that was that was from the day that I was born, I would say. As I said, I had a very
Okay.
strong connection to God, and I that was what protected me all through the sinful years of my life. I think the reason why I never took drugs, why I didn't have sex for most of my, well, for a very long time of my adult life, I think that was the protection through Christ. And I do not want to compare myself to figures from the past and in the Bible, but you have a lot of people that went through dark phases in their life, um, finding Christ, and but I think in some ways they had to go through these dark places to actually have a voice. And I couldn't do what I'm doing now, calling out certain things, if I hadn't experienced these things in my life. Obviously, I'm not advocating that other people should do the same thing just to collect experience. No, don't.
So that you've all so well, we'll get off a little bit. You've also one thing well, just because a lot of people I appreciate people who are watching this around the world. Basically, you are now obviously a conversation we had in a connection with somebody through Clubhouse, a woman called Fran. You're becoming starting to be an advocate for women in their in like domestic violence side of things. You want to talk a bit more about that?
You just said women
You
and
or you
domestic
must have
violence.
is that you're talking about you've been getting involved with that sort of I think it's domestic violence or domestic abuse. You've been getting
Yeah.
involved in that. Yeah, you started to go into well, you've been getting into that recently. What what made you choose to go down that road to support women regarding the domestic abuse and violence side?
Well, of course, I do support female victims, but my focus is actually specifically male victims of domestic abuse,
Right.
because I encountered quite a few cases of male victims, and they did not get the same support, and still don't get the same support that female victims of domestic abuse were and are getting. So, for example, in Scotland, the the percentage of victims of domestic abuse that are male are around between 35-40% of victims are male, but they only get 1% of the funding, and there are, for example, no shelters in Scotland for male victims of abuse. So that's my focus, and I started focusing on that because I deeply care about justice. And as I said earlier, I looked into men's rights through friends of mine that lost their children in an unjust custody or family law setting, and that's how I started looking at men's issues. And by doing that, I also stumbled upon domestic abuse as an issue that affects men, where men just don't get the support that they need and that they deserve. And I'm not saying about like the same support as women, but comparable support. That would be nice. Yeah, and I've been working very hard in that area for the last 2 years. I founded an organization called Gender Parity UK, and we look into legislation that is discriminatory against men and boys, and we try to change that. And that goes through many areas, from education, where boys are falling behind, homelessness, where the vast majority are men, but women get preferential treatment. Um, and I do think, of course, that women need the help, but unfortunately, men are overlooked. Other areas are drug addiction, incarceration, as I said, domestic abuse, suicide rates, mental health problems. These are all issues that I'm looking into.
So looking at the now, looking at the way now I'm going to an education system at the moment and how they are technically okay, they're indoctrinating a lot of the views of LGBTQXYZ, whatever you want to call it, these days. They're adding indoctrinating skills and kids, and with the recent news of trying to force kids at 4 years old to choose what gender they want to be, and also the new design of the flag, and it's kind of forced on you, and whether in every shop, every company seem to be endorsing the rainbow stroke whatever triangle crumbs
Yeah.
you lose track. What's your view on that, and how it's, even though looking back and what you were in and now, and how where your life is going now, what's your view on these things?
Well, can you tell you so much? When I have children, I would not send them to school anymore. I would do homeschooling. I don't trust the educational system anymore at all, and I find the indoctrination of children, both in regards to LGBT issues, but currently also in regards to environmentalism, deeply troubling. In regards to environmentalism, I find it very troubling from a mental health um, perspective, because I think they're bullying children into becoming um, anxious and depressed because of like permanent existential threat, which children really shouldn't be suffering from, especially when they live in peace times. And in regards to LGBT issues, children are developing, and everybody's going through a process of finding their own voice when they go through puberty. That's absolutely normal. And confusing children during that crucial time and bullying them and pushing them into identifying as either LGBT or non-binary or whatever. I think it's deeply disturbing, and I think it takes advantage of the most vulnerable young people that already have certain issues. When we look 30 years back, a lot of young people, especially girls, were suffering from bulimia and anorexia. 15, 15 years later, the same kind of girls were suffering with borderline personality and were hurting themselves and cutting themselves. And I believe that it's the exact same kind of young people that now identify as transgender. They're not transgender. They just suffer with identity issues. And the difference is that with bulimia, anorexia, and with borderline personalities, these were all issues that were identified as issues where the kids need help. Now, with this transgender trend, they're not seen as issues, but they're seen as something that kids should be encouraged in. And I think it's we are raising a generation of deeply damaged children, and I think when we look back in time, this will go in, yeah, as a huge case of I would say global child abuse. Obviously, it's not global because, like, in more religious countries, that's not happening. But in all of the Western world, I think we are experiencing this child abuse of the educational system, obviously connected to social media as well.
So we're going forward. Let's going forward. I'm sure we could do talk a lot more on what you do, and I think you have got. I'm sure you got more to talk about. And but let's. Where you are now? What's your okay? We're kind of pretty much out. We're at the tail end, if not back to normal in a sense already after the last from this pandemic. Um, what's your kind of goals going forward? Do you have a sort of right? I want to achieve X in the next 5 years or the next 2 years. What's your kind of where do you sort of what are you planning in your head, and where do you see yourself going forward?
Okay. I'm afraid I'm gonna leave you with doom and gloom.
Okay, that's nothing. That's good.
I think that we're heading towards societal collapse. I think that Western society is about to collapse in one way or another, and that we gonna be faced with extreme changes, extreme challenges. I'm very worried about what's going on currently with the government overreach from most countries in regards to lockdowns, mask, and especially vaccination mandates. We see a very strong increase in young people suffering with infertility here in the West. So I think there are a lot of huge, huge issues already happening. And I think we are heading towards economic collapse as well, in parts during in parts due to the lockdowns, but I think in parts that collapse was already happening before COVID started, and I think it might be used as a cover up. Um, and I I'm not saying I'm looking forward to the collapse, but I think when when people are faced with real problems and real issues, and when people actually have to work together to survive, then issues like transgenderism and feminism and LGBT issues are less important all of the sudden. I Yeah, I know that might not be what you want to hear, but I've got the sense that we're in for a very, very rough ride in the next couple of years, and I'm trying to get ready to be as independent as possible and having access to food and stuff like that. And I don't want to sound like a total
No,
prepper
no.
because I'm not. I'm not.
So
But I think when we look at what's happening currently, you would be a fool to think that it's going to be sunshine and roses in the next couple of years.
okay, apart from well, apart from maybe the fourth or fifth apocalypse happening in the next couple of years, uh, uh, what about you? What about apart from okay your goals in that sense? What about
Family.
family?
I want
Yes,
family. I want family. I want, let's say, as many children as possible. I know I'm getting older, but I'm
yeah.
working hard on that. So yeah, family.
So
That's
you
the
want
most important thing.
you see you want to get married and have kids, basically.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There we go. So you want to have that and be an advocate for family, basically.
Well, I think if the best thing you can do for this world, and I know environmentalists gonna hate me for that, but I don't care. I've been an environmentalist for the last 30 years, but not that insane environmentalism that we're experiencing now. I think the best thing that you can do for the world and for society is have kids, raise them well, be a good father, be a good partner, be a productive part of a society of your choosing, and yeah, build stability, build structure. So that's most important for me.
That's good. And then obviously you're early. You said you're your early 40s. I'm on my 46, kind of mid to late 40s kind of thing, if you want to call it that. So that end of the scale. Um, but yeah. So that's good. So where can people, if people want to reach out to you in a sense of look at with what we've talked about regarding somebody who is maybe being in the industry that you were in, but maybe struggling when it comes to mental health or maybe wanting suicide thoughts or anything reaching out to you, where can people reach you if they just want to talk? Because if they've been listening to this, wherever they might be in the world, might want to go, wow, I want to chat to this guy, and because I need the help, but I need some guidance. I need an exit plan to get out of this whole shenanigans that I'm in. Where can people connect with Phillip Tanzer?
Well, I can tell you, but that comes with a warning because I'm a horrible communicator. I'm usually very bad at responding. Um, but people can contact me on Twitter at Phillip Tanzer 1. That's Phillip Tanzer, spelled PhilipTanzer, and the number 1, Phillip Tanzer 1. Or on Facebook. I'm also Phillip Tanzer on Facebook. But if somebody sends me a friend request on Facebook, it's very important that the person sends some comment, something like, "Hey, I would like to get in touch with you regarding XYZ," because I still have people from back in the days that try to befriend me because of my porn industry, and
Right.
yeah, not that interested.
Okay. But you that's understandable. So look with what you've spoken about, and for those who are watching and have watched or maybe watching the replay, whether we have been using a video, but we'll take the audio for this to go out as on the podcast for those who want to want to listen to this. We want to thank for the people who have watched and we mentioned who have commented. There's Jacqueline McKeever, here's Eugene Fletcher, Tammy Francis, Marlene Stuber Greisler. So she likes her Guinness. I know that. But we'll go and Corinda DG Technique on StreamYard. Not StreamYard, sorry, Twitch. We had and Eugene. Thank you for the last comment. He said that Eugene Fletcher said thanks, Philip. He asked here's a question. He asked what are your views on the church's role in a conversion therapy for LGBT people. Also, where you describe yourself as bi. That's an interesting question for you.
I don't like labels, to be honest. I It was hard for me working myself out of the gay box, and I do not want to be in the bi box, because for me my attraction towards women and towards men is very different, and I'm absolutely fine with just calling myself Philip. I don't need any more labels. Um, in regards in regards to your question on conversion therapy, I'm very much against the ban of conversion therapy. And when people hear conversion therapy, they think it's electroshocks and all of that. And obviously, that's nonsense. That's a thing of the past, and I would obviously be against that. In regards to therapeutic conversion therapy, I think there should be both church, like religious conversion therapy, but also non-religious conversion therapy or sex therapy in that area, because for some people feel uncomfortable with their same-sex attraction or their transgender identity, and they want help, but they are not religious, and it's very difficult for them to find help because most so-called conversion therapies are from the church. In regards to both church conversion therapy and non-religious conversion therapy, I think it's absolutely crucial that the initiative comes from the person. You need to, bless you, Fraser.
Thank you.
you you need,
Sneezed.
if you are not ready to change your lifestyle, I think there is no point in pushing you towards it. I think advice should be allowed to be given. Um, and I think it's very important that conversion therapy doesn't start for underage people, and that includes conversion therapy from the LGBT community trying to push young people into LGBT lifestyles. But unfortunately, that's what we are seeing. So I would say get both gay and Christian conversion therapy out of children's lives. Children have the right to grow up protected.
Do you think do you think society these days, just to add to that, do you think society is becoming very cultish, as in basically as a cult? If somebody's involved in a cult, it's very sort of do this, do this, do this, my way, my way, my way. Oh, your phone and drops his phone. Do you think it's? I do. Getting my echo there slightly. Do you think it's very a cultish nation becoming a very cultish culture that it's all do this my way, and because of the lack of because of free speech that's getting kind of you can't really have an opinion anymore. You can't even say I disagree with this without thinking you're X, you're xenophobia, or you're anti this, you're anti that. I mean, do you think we're
Well,
having
I think that whoever holds the power will abuse the power. I think in the past we have seen abuses of power from the church. We have seen abuses of power from governments in the last century, and obviously in many countries also. Well, no, it is last century. Um, and I think at the moment the progressives and the lefties and the LGBT community and feminists, they hold the power and they abuse their power. I think when conservatives are in power, they tend to suppress um, progressive views, and when the progressives are in power, they tend to oppress conservative views, which we are seeing right now. So I think it's a constant power struggle. Overall, I think that conservative views are more beneficial for the stability of society, though. That's why I think what's going on at the moment is very dangerous.
okay? So we're gonna get you to say a closing thought. I want to before and say thanks to everyone who has been listening to Philip. Yeah, if it resonates with you in any way, for kind of as I say, it's been a very open and challenging topic. Something that maybe might have felt you a little bit uncomfortable, but it's what people is. Everyone's got a story and have gone through different ways, different things in their own life, and to as I say, to come out the other end in a sense to more turn their life around and to help others. and what as you knowing that they've seen the darkness and they've seen the what people go through within this industry, and to come out of it in a way of saying, oh, no, this is, and to stand against it in a sense. We want to, yeah, it's you're gonna. This is the true facts. This is the way it is, and this is Ramsey Unleashed going beyond borders. We keep it real, we keep it raw, and we keep it true to life. And at the end of the day, it's to challenge people and to so you can be challenged and hopefully be inspired by what Philip has talked about in some way to reach out in your own life. It might change your life to be that person to go and help others in a similar situation. Thank you, Philip, for being on us. Would you like to give us passing a passing thought or something to end the show on, or your final word?
Protect, fight for freedom, and fight for what's right. I think we are in a time where we actually have to stand up and reach out to each other and stand up for freedom. Otherwise, we're gonna lose it very, very soon. I don't think it's a time for cowards anymore. So join the fight.
There we go. For those who are watching around the world, and thank you for commenting. As I say, this will be in the podcast, and you can re-listen to it on Ramsey Unleashed Going Beyond Borders via Podbean, and that goes out on iTunes as well. So I want to thank you, Philip, and to everyone. We will be with Philip. We'll catch up with Philip behind the scenes of this as we end the broadcast. And to everyone who's been watching, thanks again, and have a good night, and speak to you soon.
Bye.